Tokyo, Japan, December 21st, 1945, 11:47 p.m. The Daiichi Life Insurance Building stands silent against the winter night. 8 floors up in the corner office overlooking the Imperial Palace, a single lamp burns yellow against the darkness. The rest of Tokyo sleeps under curfew. Streetlights cast long shadows across empty boulevards. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle cuts through the cold air. General Thaddeus Whitmore sits alone at his desk. 65 years old. Supreme Commander of the Allied Powers in Japan, the most powerful American in the Pacific, architect of the occupation, the man who accepted Japan's surrender 3 months ago on the deck of the USS Missouri, and at this moment sitting in his pressed uniform with 3 stars gleaming on his collar, he is completely still. In his right hand, a telegram. Western Union, routed through 3 time zones, 2 relay stations, and 6,000 miles of cable. The paper is thin, almost translucent under the lamplight. Standard military format, terse, efficient, final. Whitmore has read it 4 times now. The words haven't changed. General Beauregard Caldwell, deceased 250 hours. 21 December, stop. Heidelberg Military Hospital, stop. Complications from injuries sustained. 9 December, automobile accident, stop. Paralysis, cervical spine, stop. Age 60, stop. Funeral arrangements pending, stop. Eisenhower sends condolences, stop. 60 words. That's all it takes to summarize the end of a life. 60 words to mark the death of one of the most successful field commanders in American military history. 60 words for a man who led Third Army across Europe, who liberated France, who defeated the Wehrmacht, who survived 2 world wars only to die in a car accident on a quiet German road. Whitmore sets the telegram down slowly, precisely, aligned with the edge of his desk. His hand doesn't shake. It never does. 43 years of military service have trained every involuntary response out of his body. Emotions are weaknesses. Discipline is strength. Control is everything. But something in his chest tightens anyway. Not grief, not yet. Something else. Something more complicated than sorrow and harder to name. Memory. Outside Tokyo rebuilds. Inside, Thaddeus Whitmore closes his eyes and he's no longer in Japan. He's somewhere else. Sometime else. Somewhere 35 years ago on a dusty cavalry field in Kansas, where the sun turned everything gold and a young lieutenant did something impossible. Fort Riley, Kansas, September 1910. Dust rises from the parade ground in golden clouds that catch the afternoon light and turn the air amber. The sun hangs low over the endless Kansas prairie, casting long shadows from men and horses arranged in perfect military formation. It's hot. The kind of prairie heat that bakes the ground hard and makes uniforms stick to skin. Cicadas drone in the grass. Somewhere beyond the fort, a meadowlark calls. 240 soldiers drill in formation. Their boots strike the earth in unison. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm is hypnotic, mechanical, exactly what the Army requires. Major Thaddeus Whitmore watches from the reviewing stand, 30 years old, 8 years out of West Point, where he graduated first in his class. Already marked for higher command, already being groomed for stars. He stands with his hands clasped behind his back, posture rigid as the flagpole eyes scanning the field with the precision of a man who sees patterns in chaos and mistakes in perfection. He's wearing his dress uniform despite the heat, perfectly pressed, brass polished to mirror shine. Not a wrinkle, not a speck of dust. This is how Major Whitmore presents himself to the world, controlled, immaculate, unshakable. Beside him, Colonel Jameson, commanding Fort Riley, shifts his weight and wipes sweat from his forehead. Hell of a day for cavalry drills. Every day is appropriate for training, sir, Whitmore replies without looking away from the field. Jameson grunts. You sound like a textbook, Whitmore. The textbook is correct, sir. Another grunt, but Jameson is smiling slightly. He knows Whitmore's reputation. Brilliant tactician, exceptional planner, absolutely by the book. The kind of officer who will make general before he's 50 if he doesn't make too many enemies along the way. The cavalry drills are scheduled for 1,600 hours. 4 companies, 16 officers, 240 men. Whitmore has reviewed the roster personally. He knows every name, every rank, every service record. He knows which horses are temperamental and which officers drink too much and which sergeants cut corners during inspections. This is how he operates. Information, preparation, control. Know everything, miss nothing, never be surprised. The first 3 companies perform adequately. Textbook formations, textbook speed, textbook turns. The horses move in synchronized lines. The officers call commands at regulation intervals. Everything is precisely as it should be. Adequate, acceptable, unremarkable. Whitmore makes notes on his clipboard. Minor deviations, nothing serious, but worth recording. Then the fourth company rides onto the field. Lieutenant Beauregard Caldwell leads them. Even from a distance, even among 200 soldiers in identical uniforms, a Caldwell is distinctive. 25 years old, 3 years out of West Point, where he graduated third in his class, top of his cavalry tactics course, but marked down for excessive independence in strategic planning. His service record includes notations like exceptional instinct and requires close supervision, and brilliant but undisciplined, the kind of notations that make senior officers nervous because they suggest talent that refuses to be contained. Whitmore leans forward slightly. He's heard about this one. The lieutenant who treats cavalry drills like combat exercises, who trains his men harder than regulation requires, who's been quietly reprimanded twice for exceeding authorized training parameters, whatever that means. Caldwell sits on his horse at the head of his company, not at attention exactly, more like coiled energy barely held in check. His uniform is regulation but worn. His boots are scuffed. His hat sits at a slight angle. He's not sloppy, just practical, like a man who cares more about function than appearance. The exercise is simple. Basic maneuver, the kind of drill every cavalry officer masters by his second year at the point. Advance in column formation. Split into 2 wings on command. Reform at the original position and retreat. Elementary, the cavalry equivalent of marching in a straight line. The reviewing stand settles in to watch. This should take 6 minutes, maybe 7 if the company is slow. Caldwell's company advances. The horses move fast, too fast for regulation speed. Whitmore frowns and makes a note, but the formation holds. Tight, controlled, not a horse out of position. The speed is aggressive, but the precision is perfect. Somehow both reckless and disciplined at once. Colonel Jameson notices too. He's moving too fast. Yes, sir, Whitmore agrees. Going to lose cohesion at that speed. Likely, sir. They watch. The company doesn't lose cohesion. The split command comes. Left wing, right wing, standard call. The company should divide, cleanly turn in opposite directions and prepare to reform. The company divides, and then something happens that isn't in the manual. The left wing doesn't just turn left 90 degrees and halt. It wheels completely around in a sweeping arc, circling at full gallop behind the right wing. For 3 seconds, the formation looks like pure chaos. Horses crossing paths at speed, dust obscuring everything. Hooves thundering. The reviewing stand holds its collective breath. Men are going to collide. Horses are going to panic. This is going to be a disaster. Except it isn't. The dust clears. The company has reformed. Not in the original position where regulation dictates they should be, but in a defensive square, facing outward in 4 directions. Every man positioned to respond to attack from any angle. The kind of formation you'd use if you were surrounded by enemy cavalry and fighting for your life. The entire maneuver takes 40 seconds from start to finish. The reviewing stand is silent. Colonel Jameson stands up slowly. What the hell was that? Whitmore doesn't answer immediately. His eyes are locked on Lieutenant Caldwell, who sits on his horse at the center of the square. Back straight, face forward, not smiling, not apologetic, not defiant, just waiting. Waiting for judgment from officers who don't understand what they just saw. That, Whitmore says slowly, each word measured, was not the assigned drill. Damn right it wasn't, Jameson snaps. His face is red, not from heat, from anger. That was dangerous, reckless, completely unauthorized. He cups his hands around his mouth. Caldwell. The name echoes across the parade ground. Report to Major Whitmore's office, immediately. Dismissed. Caldwell salutes. Sharp. Perfect. Then turns his horse and rides toward the stables. His company follows. Still in formation, still disciplined. The sound of their hooves fades across the prairie. Whitmore is still staring at the space where they performed that impossible maneuver, thinking, analyzing, trying to understand what he just witnessed. You'll handle this, Jameson asks. Yes, sir. Good, because if this is how he trains his men, he's going to get someone killed. Jameson stalks off toward headquarters. Whitmore remains on the reviewing stand. Alone now, the sun is lower, the shadows longer. The parade ground empty except for settling dust. He thinks about that defensive square, about the speed of the reformation, about the trust required for men to execute that maneuver without prior warning, because Whitmore knows instinctively that Caldwell didn't brief his company beforehand. That was pure improvisation, pure instinct, the officer deciding in the moment and the men following without question. It's everything the manual says not to do, and it was magnificent. Whitmore walks slowly back to his office, already composing the reprimand he'll need to deliver, already knowing it won't change anything about Lieutenant Caldwell. Whitmore's office, Fort Riley, 1 hour later. The office is small but organized with the obsessive precision that characterizes everything about Major Thaddeus Whitmore. Desk aligned perfectly with the window. Inkwell positioned exactly 3 inches from the right edge. Books arranged by height on the shelf spines flush. 2 chairs facing each other at precise 90-degree angles. The only personal item is a single photograph on the wall, Whitmore's West Point graduating class 1902. 128 young men in gray uniforms. Whitmore in the front row. First in his class, future general. Lieutenant Caldwell stands at attention in front of the desk, heels together, shoulders back, eyes focused on a point 6 inches above Whitmore's head. Standard position for a junior officer receiving correction from a superior. He hasn't been invited to sit. Whitmore doesn't look up from the report he's writing. His pen moves across the paper in steady measured strokes. The nib scratches softly, the only sound in the room. The silence stretches. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. This is a technique Whitmore learned early in his career. Let subordinates wait. Let them stand in silence. Let them think about what they've done. Let the anticipation of punishment become more effective than the punishment itself. Let the silence do the work. But Caldwell doesn't fidget, doesn't shift his weight from foot to foot, doesn't cough or clear his throat or betray any sign of discomfort. He just stands there breathing steadily, staring at that fixed point above Whitmore's head. Interesting. Most lieutenants would be sweating by now. Most would be rehearsing apologies. Most would be showing some sign of nervousness. Caldwell looks like a man waiting for a train. Patient, calm, present but not worried. Very interesting. Whitmore finishes the sentence he's writing, sets down his pen with deliberate care, blots the ink, folds his hands on the desk, looks up. For a moment, neither man speaks. Whitmore studies the young officer before him. Caldwell has the build of a natural horseman. Broad shoulders, strong hands with calluses from rains. Face weathered from years in the sun. More weathered than a lieutenant's face should be. Eyes that don't blink often. There's something in those eyes. Not arrogance, not quite defiance. Confidence. The absolute certainty that comes from knowing you're good at what you do and not caring whether anyone else recognizes it. Lieutenant Caldwell. Sir, that was not the drill you were assigned. No, sir. You were ordered to execute a standard cavalry split and reform. Yes, sir. Instead, you executed... Whitmore pauses, choosing his words carefully. Something else. Yes, sir. Something that could have resulted in men being injured. No, sir. The answer is quick, certain, not defensive, just matter of fact. Whitmore raises an eyebrow. No. My men are trained for that maneuver, sir. We've practiced it for 6 weeks. Every man knows his position. Every horse knows the pattern. There was no danger of injury. You practiced an unauthorized maneuver for 6 weeks. Yes, sir. Without informing your commanding officer. I informed Captain Morris, sir. He gave verbal approval. Whitmore makes a mental note to speak with Captain Morris. Verbal approval for unauthorized training modifications is not sufficient, Lieutenant. Understood, sir. Another pause. Whitmore leans back in his chair, studies Caldwell's face for signs of insubordination, finds none. Just that maddening calm. Why, Whitmore asks finally. For the first time, Caldwell's gaze drops slightly, not breaking attention entirely, but meeting Whitmore's eyes directly. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. Because the assigned drill would get men killed in actual combat, sir. The statement hangs in the air, bold, challenging, the kind of thing a lieutenant shouldn't say to a major. But Caldwell's voice isn't disrespectful, just honest, like he's explaining a mathematical proof that has only one correct answer. Explain, Whitmore says. In combat, if you split your force and reform in the same position, you are predictable. The enemy knows where you'll be. They can target that position with artillery or rifles or their own cavalry charge. You become a static target. Caldwell's voice is level, not defensive, not argumentative, just stating facts. By reforming in a defensive square, you give yourself options. You can respond to threats from any direction. You're unpredictable. The enemy can't plan for where you'll be because you're not where you're supposed to be. This was not a combat situation, Lieutenant. This was a training drill. All training is for combat, sir, or it should be. Caldwell pauses. If we're training men to execute maneuvers that will get them killed, what's the point of the training? Whitmore feels something shift in his chest. Irritation? Yes, but also something else. Recognition. This is how he thinks, how he's always thought. The practical application, the real-world consequences, the difference between theory and reality. The difference is that Whitmore learned to hide it, learned to follow the system, learned to work within the rules and change them slowly from the inside, learned to be patient and political and careful. Caldwell hasn't learned that yet, maybe never will. Your men, Whitmore says carefully, did you brief them on this maneuver beforehand, before the drill? No, sir. They executed it anyway. Yes, sir. How? For the first time, something like pride flickers across Caldwell's face. Brief, controlled, but unmistakable. They follow where I lead, sir. They trust my judgment. We train hard enough that they can adapt to any command I give. There it is, the thing that makes senior officers nervous. The thing that's in Caldwell's service record under requires supervision. He doesn't command through regulation. He commands through trust. His men don't follow the manual. They follow him. They'd probably ride off a cliff if he ordered it because they believe he knows what he's doing. It's dangerous. It's unorthodox. It violates every principle of standardized military command. And God help everyone it's effective. Whitmore picks up his pen, returns to the report he's writing. Service evaluation required monthly documentation on all junior officers under his supervision. You're dismissed, Lieutenant. Return to your duties. Caldwell blinks once. Sir, you heard me. No reprimand, sir. I'll be submitting a formal report to Colonel Jameson. I'll recommend a commendation for tactical innovation and initiative under field conditions. Whitmore doesn't look up from his writing. You showed creativity. You trained your men effectively. The outcome was successful. Those are qualities the Army needs. Something changes in the temperature of the room. Caldwell's posture relaxes infinitesimally. Thank you, sir. But Lieutenant, Whitmore looks up now, meets Caldwell's eyes directly. The next time you plan to improvise during a drill, inform your commanding officer first, in writing. With proper authorization through the chain of command. Brilliant tactics are only brilliant if they don't get you court-martialed. Understood. Understood, sir. One more thing. Whitmore sets down his pen. This is important. This is the lesson he needs to impart. You're young, you're talented, you're going places in this Army if you don't destroy yourself first. But you need to learn something that West Point doesn't teach. What's that, sir? When to follow orders even when you know they're wrong. When to keep your mouth shut. When to do things the Army's way instead of your way. Whitmore's voice is quiet but firm. That's what separates officers who make captain from officers who make general. Caldwell straightens. His face becomes unreadable. With respect, sir, I'd rather be right than make general. Whitmore studies him. This stubborn, brilliant, impossible young man who's going to change the Army or die trying. Maybe both. Ask me in 20 years if you still believe that, Lieutenant. Caldwell salutes. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. He turns and walks out. Whitmore sits alone in his office, stares at the report he's writing, thinks about that defensive square, about the trust required, about the courage to do what's right instead of what's authorized. He picks up his pen, writes, Lieutenant Caldwell demonstrates exceptional tactical aptitude and creative problem-solving abilities. His men exhibit unusual cohesion and trust. However, Lieutenant Caldwell has not yet learned the importance of working within established command structures. Recommend assignment to positions where his combat instincts can be utilized while ensuring appropriate supervision. He pauses, adds one more line. This officer has the potential to become either a great commander or a great problem. Possibly both. He signs it, files it, returns to his other duties. Outside, the Kansas sun sets over Fort Riley. Lieutenant Caldwell brushes down his horse and thinks about defensive squares. Major Whitmore reviews logistics reports and thinks about whether he just met someone who will change military history. Neither of them knows that 35 years from now, they'll both be right. France, November 11th, 1918. The war has been over for 3 hours. At 11 a.m. precisely, the guns fell silent across the Western Front. After 4 years of slaughter that consumed a generation. After battles that turned French farmland into moonscapes of mud and corpses. After innovations in killing that range from poison gas to machine guns to tanks. After 16 million dead. Silence. The silence is almost louder than the guns were. Rain falls on Paris. Not the celebratory rain of newsreels and newspaper photographs. Just cold November rain that turns the city gray and makes the cobblestones slick and dangerous. The cafes are full of soldiers waiting to go home. The streets are full of women in black who will wait forever for men who aren't coming back. The whole city smells like smoke and wet stone and relief and grief in equal measure. In a small restaurant near the Arc de Triomphe, at a table by the window overlooking a rain-washed street, Major Thaddeus Whitmore sits across from Captain Beauregard Caldwell. They haven't seen each other in 8 years, not since Fort Riley, not since that cavalry drill and that conversation about following orders and making general. Whitmore is 38 now, staff officer to General John Pershing, commander of American Expeditionary Forces. 3 medals on his chest for strategic planning and logistical excellence. Clean uniform recently pressed. Smooth hands that haven't held a rifle in combat. Weathered face from stress rather than sun. The war for him was maps and logistics and coordinating the movement of hundreds of thousands of men across an ocean and into battle. He spent it in headquarters, behind the lines, in rooms with other staff officers arguing about supply routes and artillery positions and casualty projections, where wars are actually won if you ask the men who fight with paperwork instead of bullets. Caldwell is 33, captain now, commander of a tank company, 1st Tank Brigade, face scarred from shrapnel near his left eye, scars on his hands from hot metal and engine burns, burn marks on his neck from a fire that nearly killed him at Saint-Mihiel, uniform that's been mended 3 times because replacement uniforms are in short supply at the front. He spent the war in the mud, behind steel armor plate, breathing diesel fumes and cordite, leading men into machine gun fire. Where wars are actually fought if you ask the men who measure victory in yards gained and friends lost. The waiter brings wine, a bottle of Bordeaux from before the war. Good vintage. The restaurant is celebrating. Everyone is celebrating. The nightmare is over. Neither officer touches the wine immediately. "You look good, Thaddeus," Caldwell says, finally. It's not quite a compliment. Something in the tone suggests observation rather than praise. "Headquarters must agree with you." "You look terrible, Beauregard. France must not." Caldwell laughs, short, sharp, the laugh of a man who's forgotten how to find things funny. "France is beautiful. German artillery less so. They're using first names. It's strange after 8 years of military hierarchy. At Fort Riley it was major and lieutenant, sir and subordinate. But now they're both officers who've survived the Great War. Rank still matters, but it matters less after you've seen what they've seen. Even if what they've seen was from very different angles." Whitmore raises his glass, studies the wine in the gray afternoon light. "To survival," Caldwell raises his, studies Whitmore across the table. "To victory." They drink. The wine is better than anything either of them has tasted in 4 years. Complex, subtle, proof that civilization still exists somewhere beneath the mud and barbed wire. The silence that follows is complicated, weighted with things neither man knows how to say. "I read your after-action report," Whitmore says finally, breaking the silence because someone has to. "Belleau Wood, Saint-Mihiel, Meuse-Argonne, all of them. And you're still improvising." Caldwell laughs again, this time with something resembling genuine humor. "Still getting the job done, too." "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point, Petain." Caldwell leans forward. The humor drains from his face like water from a sieve. His eyes are intense, focused. The eyes of a man who's seen things that can't be unseen and learned lessons that can't be unlearned. "Thaddeus, listen to me. I've spent 18 months in those damn tanks. 18 months of combat. You know what I learned?" Whitmore waits. "The manual doesn't work. Not in real combat. Not when men are dying. Plans fall apart the second the shooting starts. The second a shell lands in your command post. The second your radio operator gets his head blown off and you can't communicate with anyone. The officers who survive are the ones who can adapt, who can think, who can move, who can make decisions in 30 seconds that staff officers spend 3 days arguing about. Structure saves lives, Beauregard. Speed saves lives. Aggression saves lives. Decision saves lives." Caldwell's fist hits the table softly, not angry, emphatic. "Hesitation kills. I watched it happen. I watched men die because some colonel 6 miles behind the lines told them to wait for artillery support that never came. I watched opportunities disappear because some general needed 3 days to make a decision that should have taken 3 minutes. This war wasn't won by caution, Thaddeus. It was won despite it. Careful, Whitmore's tone sharpens. Becomes formal. The voice of a superior officer warning a subordinate. You're talking about our superiors, about the men who commanded this war. I'm talking about the truth, and you know it's true. You've seen the same casualty reports I have. You know how many men died because someone was too careful, too cautious, too afraid to make a decision. The tension hangs between them like smoke. In the corner, someone starts playing an accordion, a sad song, something about soldiers going home. Couples begin to dance slowly. The war is over. Life continues. Life for always continues. But at this table, two officers are fighting a different kind of battle. Philosophy versus philosophy, theory versus practice. The man who plans versus the man who executes. Whitmore speaks quietly, carefully, each word chosen with precision. You're brilliant, Beauregard. Everyone knows it. Your reputation is spreading. People talk about your tactics, about your leadership. But brilliance without discipline is just chaos. You need to learn control. You need to learn patience. You need to learn to be more like you. Caldwell's voice is flat, not angry, just tired. To survive the army in peacetime. The words land like a punch. Caldwell sits back, studies Whitmore across the table, really looks at him, at the clean uniform and the smooth hands, and the face that's aged from stress rather than danger. At the man who's learned to survive the system by becoming part of it. Is that what you're doing? Caldwell asks quietly. Surviving, we both are. No. Caldwell shakes his head slowly. You're surviving. I'm living. There's a difference, Wasayasung. Whitmore feels something cold settle in his stomach. It's not anger. It's worse. It's the recognition that Caldwell might be right. That the last 4 years, while Caldwell was charging across France in a steel box, leading men into machine gun fire, Whitmore was shuffling papers in a safe office with a comfortable bed and regular meals. Both necessary, both honorable, both contributing to victory. But only one of them feels like actually fighting. You'll never make general with that attitude, Whitmore says. It comes out harsher than he intended. Caldwell smiles. It's a sad smile. Understanding, almost pitying. I don't need to make General Thaddeus. I just need to lead men who trust me, who follow me, who believe I'll get them through whatever hell we're walking into. You're the one who wants stars on his collar, not me. And when the war is over, when there are no more men to lead, when there's no more fighting, what then? Then I'll figure something else out. Caldwell stands, drops money on the table. More than the wine costs. I should go. Early train to Le Havre tomorrow. Ship leaves for New York on Thursday. Beauregard. Caldwell pauses, hand on the back of his chair. Whitmore wants to say something, wants to bridge this gap that's open between them, wants to explain that they're both right and both wrong and both necessary, wants to say that he admires Caldwell's certainty even as he fears what it will cost him. But the words won't come. So instead he says, what you did at Meuse Argonne, the flanking maneuver through the forest, when everyone said it was impossible, when the French said the terrain was too rough for tanks. Whitmore hesitates. The words are harder than they should be. Praise always is. It was the right call. Brilliant, actually. I wrote a commendation. It should come through next month. For a moment, Caldwell's face softens. The hardness around his eyes fades. He looks younger, more like the lieutenant from Fort Riley. Thank you, Thaddeus. That means something. Coming from you, it means something. But you went too far. You risked too much. You could have lost your entire company in that forest. One of these days, your instincts are going to get you killed. The moment passes. The hardness returns. Caldwell pulls on his coat, wet from rain, smelling of smoke and wool. Maybe, but I'd rather die being right than live being careful. He pauses at the door, looks back. Ask me in 20 years if I still believe that. Then he walks out into the Paris rain. Whitmore sits alone at the table, stares at the wine, at the couples dancing, at the accordion player in the corner playing songs about soldiers coming home, at the life that's resuming all around him while he can't shake the feeling that he just lost an argument he didn't know he was having. He drinks Caldwell's wine, then his own, orders a third glass. Outside, Paris celebrates. Inside, Thaddeus Whitmore wonders if caution is really wisdom or just another word for fear. He doesn't find an answer. Washington, D.C. July 28, 1932. 3:00 p.m. The nation is broken. 15 million Americans unemployed. 1 in 4. Banks collapsing like dominoes. Farms foreclosed. Families living in shanty towns they call Hoovervilles because President Herbert Hoover won't help them, can't help them, or doesn't care enough to help them, depending on who you ask. The stock market crashed 3 years ago and took the country with it. The American dream has become the American nightmare, and there's no end in sight. Into this nightmare march the Bonus Army. 40,000 veterans, men who fought in the Great War, men who survived the Western Front, men who were promised a bonus payment, compensation for their service, payable in 1945. Men who can't wait until 1945 because they're starving now. Their children are starving now. Their wives are starving now, so they march on Washington. From every state, by train and truck and foot, they build a camp on the Anacostia Flats across the river from the capital. Tents and shacks and makeshift structures from scrap wood and canvas and anything they can find. They call it Bonus City. Population 40,000 men, women, and children living in poverty within sight of the federal government. They petition Congress, march peacefully, sing songs, wave flags, remind politicians that they serve their country and now their country should serve them. Congress votes, the bill fails, no bonus, no relief, no help. The veterans don't leave, can't leave, have nowhere to go. President Hoover makes a decision, clear the camps, use the army if necessary, restore order, make them leave. In the War Department, 3 floors up in an office overlooking the Potomac River, Chief of Staff General Thaddeus Whitmore receives the order. He's 52 years old now, 3 stars on his collar. The youngest Chief of Staff in Army history, 18 years since Fort Riley, 14 years since Paris. He's survived the peacetime army that chews up aggressive officers and promotes careful ones. He's climbed every ladder, mastered every political game, learned when to speak and when to stay silent. Learned how to work within the system instead of fighting it. He's everything he was supposed to become, everything the Army needs in a peacetime leader. And now he has to clear a camp full of veterans using soldiers. The order sits on his desk. Presidential authority, legal, proper, and going through all appropriate channels. Whitmore stares at it for 10 minutes, then picks up the phone. Get me Major Caldwell at Fort Myer immediately. The Anacostia Flats, July 28, 1932, 4:45 p.m. The afternoon sun beats down on the Anacostia Flats like a hammer. Heat shimmers off the ground in visible waves. The air smells like cooking fires and sewage, and too many people living too close together without proper sanitation. Children play in the dirt. Women hang laundry on ropes strung between tents. Men sit in the shade and talk about the war, about politics, about whether Congress will change its mind. They don't know what's coming. The cavalry assembles at the edge of the camp. 4 companies, mounted soldiers, sabers sheathed but visible. Not quite a military formation, not quite a police action. Something in between. Something the manual doesn't have a name for. Major Beauregard Caldwell sits on his horse at the head of the column. 47 years old, 25 years of service. 3 medals from the Great War, but no promotion above major because his service record still includes notations about requires supervision and tendency to exceed authority. The scars from France are still visible on his hands. Burn marks still mark his neck. He spent the last 14 years in obscurity. No more glory, no more combat, just training exercises and peacetime drills and the slow realization that Whitmore was right in Paris. The Army in peacetime is about survival, not living, about following orders and keeping your head down and not making trouble. But today there's an order, a clear order, from the Chief of Staff himself, from Whitmore, and Caldwell follows orders, even these orders. The camp spreads out before him, not an enemy position, not a military target, just desperate Americans living in desperation, tents sagging in the heat, shacks that will collapse in the first strong wind, cooking fires, laundry lines, an American flag flying from a pole made from a broomstick, children playing in the dirt. These aren't enemy soldiers, these are veterans, American veterans, men who fought in the same war Caldwell fought, men who believed the same promises, men who trusted their government and now feel betrayed by it. But orders are orders. General Whitmore approaches on horseback, 3 stars gleaming in the afternoon sun, face expressionless. The face of a man who's learned to hide what he's thinking. He reins up next to Caldwell. For a moment, neither speaks. Just 2 officers on horseback looking at a camp full of Americans who need help and are about to receive violence instead. Major Caldwell, General Whitmore. They haven't used first names in years, haven't spoken directly in longer. Different bases, different duties, different lives. But here they are, together again, like Fort Riley, like Paris, the careful officer and the aggressive one, the politician and the warrior. Except this time there's no glory in what needs to be done. You have your orders, Whitmore says. Yes, sir. Clear the camp. Minimum necessary force, no casualties if possible. Correct. Caldwell stares at the camp, at the children, at the women, at the men who look like he looked in 1918, exhausted, desperate, clinging to dignity by their fingernails. These are veterans, General. I'm aware, Major. Some of them probably served under us in France. That's not relevant to this operation. Isn't it? Caldwell's voice is quiet, not challenging, just asking. Whitmore's jaw tightens. A muscle twitches near his eye. The only sign that this is difficult for him, too. You have your orders, Major. Will you execute them, or do I need to find someone else? The question hangs in the air. This is the moment, the choice, the line in the sand. Caldwell could refuse, could resign his commission right here, could stand with the veterans instead of against them. History might remember him differently, maybe better, probably worse, but differently. He thinks about Fort Riley, about that defensive square, about doing what's right instead of what's authorized. He thinks about Paris, about Whitmore saying he needs to learn when to follow orders even when they're wrong. He thinks about 20 years of service, about his pension, about his wife Cordelia waiting at Fort Myer, about what happens to officers who disobey direct orders from the Chief of Staff. I'll execute them, sir. Good. Whitmore turns his horse. Formal, distant, a general giving orders to a subordinate. Nothing more. I'll be at headquarters. Report when the operation is complete. He rides away. Caldwell watches him go, thinks about all the conversations they never finished, about the argument in Paris, about the difference between surviving and living, about what happens to warriors in peacetime when there are no more battles to fight and all that remains is following orders you hate from men you used to respect. Then he turns to his sergeants. Advance, walking speed, give them time to evacuate. We're not monsters. The cavalry moves forward, not at a charge, just a steady walk. The horses step carefully through the dirt. The veterans see them coming, start to scatter. Some grab their children, some grab their possessions. Some grab their flags and their signs and their dignity. Some just stand there, defiant, refusing to move. This is America. They have rights. They serve their country. They're not criminals. The tear gas comes next, standard crowd control. Nothing lethal, just chemical clouds that burn eyes and throats and lungs, make breathing impossible, make staying impossible. People run, coughing, crying, stumbling. Then the torches. The soldiers don't light them. The veterans do, burning their own camp rather than let the army destroy it, burning their American flags, burning their hope. The tents catch fast, canvas goes up like paper. The shacks collapse into ash. Bonus City dies in flames and smoke and tears and rage. By nightfall, the Anacostia flats are cleared. Empty, silent except for smoldering fires. Mission accomplished. No soldiers killed. 2 veterans dead from tear gas complications. Dozens injured. The rest scattered into the darkness of the Depression. Success. By military standards, a successful operation. In the War Department, General Thaddeus Whitmore writes his official report. His hand is steady. His handwriting is precise. Operation conducted with appropriate force. Objectives achieved. Casualties minimal. Recommend Major Caldwell for commendation for professional execution under difficult circumstances. He signs it, files it, goes home to his wife, tells her it was a routine day at the office. She believes him because she wants to. That night, Whitmore can't sleep. Lies awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about veterans living in tents, about children breathing tear gas, about American soldiers clearing American veterans from American soil, about all the orders he's followed, all the compromises he's made, all the times he chose survival over principle, about whether any of it was worth it. In Fort Myer, Major Beauregard Caldwell sits at his desk, writes a letter to his wife Cordelia. Dearest Cordelia, I followed orders today, did what was necessary, what I was commanded to do. But I can't stop thinking about their faces. They look like us, Cordelia. They look like men I fought beside in France. Men who trusted their government. Men who believed in something. Whitmore gave the order. I executed it. We're both responsible. We're both damned for what happened today. But someone had to do it. That's what I keep telling myself. Someone had to follow orders. Someone had to clear the camps. Someone had to choose duty over conscience. I chose duty. I always choose duty. But I'm not sure I can live with choosing duty anymore. Your loving husband, Beauregard. He doesn't send the letter, reads it twice, then burns it in the candle flame on his desk. Watches the paper curl and blacken. Watches his words become ash. Some truths can't be spoken, can only be carried, can only be buried deep where no one else can see them, where they'll stay buried forever, or until they're no longer capable of hurting anyone. Tokyo, Japan, December 21st, 1945, 11:58 p.m. Whitmore blinks, returns to the present, to Tokyo, to this office, to this desk, to this moment. The memories recede like tide water. Fort Riley, Paris, Washington, all of it retreating back into the past where it belongs, where it can't touch him anymore, except it does touch him and is touching him now, because Caldwell is dead. The telegram still sits on his desk, real, physical, proof that the impossible has happened, that Caldwell survived 2 world wars and died in a car accident on a quiet German road. Whitmore stands slowly. His knees ache. 65 years of living in a body that's been pushed too hard for too long. He walks to the window, looks out over Tokyo. 8 million Japanese sleep under occupation. Somewhere beyond that, the Pacific stretches 6,000 miles to California. Somewhere on the other side of the world, in a hospital in Germany, Beauregard Caldwell has stopped breathing. Whitmore's reflection stares back at him from the glass. Old, tired, successful by every measure the Army uses to judge success. 3 stars. Supreme Commander, an architect of victory, everything he wanted to become. But right now, looking at his reflection, he sees only the distance between who he is and who Caldwell was. The distance between the officer who survived by compromising and the officer who stayed true until the end. You were right, Beauregard, he whispers to the window, to the darkness, to the ghost of a man he respected but never knew how to reach. About everything. You were right about everything. He returns to his desk, opens the bottom drawer. Inside a file folder, thick, official. He's kept it for 35 years, updated it religiously, why he's never been certain. To track arrival, to follow a career, to maintain connection to the only man who ever understood what it meant to be a warrior in peacetime. He removes the file, opens it. Beauregard Caldwell's complete service record. Every evaluation, every commendation, every reprimand. The paper trail of a military life. From second lieutenant to general. From Fort Riley to Europe. From young officer full of promise to legendary commander full of controversy. Whitmore reads through it. All of it, even though he's read it before, even though he knows what it says. He reads it again because he needs to, because now it's not a service record. It's a eulogy. It's all that remains of a man who changed history. The slapping incident in Sicily. Whitmore remembers sending the telegram. Remembers choosing each word carefully. Control yourself, George. Using the first name for the first time in years. Allowing himself that small intimacy across thousands of miles of ocean and war. Caldwell's response had been immediate. I'll win this war my way, Thaddeus. You win yours. The race across Europe. Whitmore had tracked every mile. Had pins on his wall map. Blue for his Pacific advance. Red for Caldwell's European advance. Racing across different hemispheres toward the same victory. Moving in parallel. Never meeting. Never speaking. Just moving forward. The Nazi comment that ended everything. The cable from Eisenhower. I have to relieve him. I have no choice. Whitmore's response, I understand. Do what you must. The accident report. December 9th, low-speed collision. Broken neck, paralyzed. The cable, Patterson critically injured. Prognosis uncertain. Whitmore had drafted a telegram. Personal, from one old officer to another. Fight this, Beauregard. Don't let a car accident finish what the Germans couldn't. He'd never sent it. Too personal, too revealing. Better to maintain distance. Better to stay professional. Better to send flowers with a formal card. Better to survive, by keeping everyone at arm's length. Now there will never be another chance. Whitmore closes the file, places it back in the drawer, locks it, looks at the telegram one more time. Someone needs to say something. Someone needs to mark this moment. Someone needs to tell the world what Beauregard Caldwell meant, what he accomplished, what he represented. And Thaddeus Whitmore realizes with the cold clarity that comes at midnight when you're 65 and alone and confronting your own failures, that the someone is him, not because he wants to, because he has to. Because if he doesn't, who will? Who else knew Caldwell for 35 years? Who else tracked his career? Who else recognized what he was? Nobody. Just Whitmore, the man who kept Caldwell at a distance for decades and now must find words to bridge that distance one final time. He picks up the phone. Get me my secretary. I don't care what time it is. Wake her if necessary. I need to write a statement about General Caldwell. It's important. It can't wait. He hangs up, sits back in his chair, stares at the ceiling and tries to find words for something he's never been able to put into words. Respect, admiration, envy, recognition. The complicated tangle of feelings that defined his relationship with Beauregard Caldwell for 35 years. How do you summarize that in a statement? How do you tell the truth when you've spent your entire career hiding it? The door opens. His secretary enters, notepad ready, eyes tired, but professional. General Whitmore, you wanted to draft a statement. Whitmore nods. Yes, about General Beauregard Caldwell, who died today, in Germany, at age 60. The secretary's pen hovers over paper. Waiting. Whitmore takes a breath. 35 years of silence. Time to break it. Even if he doesn't know how. Even if the words won't come. Even if it's far too late. Tokyo, Japan. December 22nd, 1945. 12:30 a.m. The secretary is gone. The statement is typed, filed, ready for release to the press in a few hours. The world will wake up and read Thaddeus Whitmore's tribute to Beauregard Caldwell. Formal words about a great soldier, true words as far as they go, but not the whole truth, never the whole truth. Whitmore sits alone in his office. The telegram lies on his desk where he left it. Final, irrevocable. The period at the end of a sentence that began 35 years ago on a Kansas cavalry field. He should go to bed, should try to sleep. Tomorrow will bring meetings about the occupation decisions, about Japan's reconstruction, the endless machinery of governing a defeated nation. But he can't move yet, can't stop remembering. Because remembering Caldwell means remembering the war, their war. 2 theaters, 2 oceans, 2 men fighting the same enemy in completely different ways and somehow impossibly both winning. His hand reaches for the bottom drawer again. Not for the service record this time, for something else. A leather-bound journal. Personal, private. The kind of record an officer keeps for himself and never shows anyone. Observations, thoughts. The things he can't say in official reports. He opens it, flips past pages, finds the entry he's looking for. December 8th, 1941. The day after Pearl Harbor. The day America entered the war. The day everything changed, the White House. December 8th, 1941, 2:00 p.m. General Thaddeus Whitmore stands in the War Department briefing room with 24 other senior officers. The room is thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Maps cover every wall. The Pacific, Europe, Africa, the whole world at war, and America is no longer watching from the sidelines. President Roosevelt has just declared war. Congress approved it in minutes. And now the military must figure out how to fight a war on 2 fronts against enemies who've been preparing for years while America slept. The assignments come quickly. Theaters, commands, deployments, men's fates decided in sentences. General Marshall will coordinate overall strategy. General Eisenhower to European theater, eventual command of invasion forces. General Whitmore, the chief of staff, looks up from his notes. Pacific theater, you'll coordinate with MacArthur, island hopping strategy, logistics, and supply chain management. Your experience in organizational planning makes you the ideal choice. Whitmore nods. He expected this. His whole career since the Great War has been preparation for exactly this kind of command. Strategic, organizational, the big picture, moving chess pieces across an ocean, making sure men have bullets and food and fuel when they need them. Not glorious, but essential. Then the briefing officer continues down his list. Colonel Caldwell, Armored Division, North Africa, initially under Patton, then wherever we need breakthrough capability. Mobile warfare, fast strikes, Colonel Caldwell's experience with tanks and aggressive tactics makes him suitable for armor command. Across the room, Beauregard Caldwell stands at attention, 56 years old now. Colonel's eagles on his collar finally after all these years. 10 years since the bonus army. 10 years of peacetime commands and training exercises and watching the world slide toward war while the army stayed small and unprepared and hoped the war would pass America by. It didn't pass. Now Caldwell has his war. The kind of war he was born to fight. Fast, mobile, aggressive, everything his career has been preparing him for. Their eyes meet across the briefing room. Brief, acknowledging. A moment of recognition between two officers who haven't spoken in a decade but understand each other perfectly. Then both men look away. After the briefing, officers cluster in small groups, making plans, discussing logistics, accepting congratulations or commiserating about assignments. Whitmore finds Caldwell in the hallway, standing alone, looking at a map on the wall. North Africa, the desert where Rommel's Africa Corps has been winning for 2 years. Colonel Caldwell. Caldwell turns, face neutral, respectful, the face of a subordinate addressing a superior officer. Nothing more. General Whitmore. They haven't spoken since the bonus army, haven't even been in the same room. Different bases, different lives. The distance has grown into a chasm neither knows how to cross. North Africa, Whitmore says, formal, professional, good terrain for armor, open, fast. Yes, sir. Rommel won't be easy. He's been winning in the desert for 2 years. No, sir, but neither will I. The confidence is still there, undiminished. The same certainty Caldwell had at Fort Riley, at 25, at 33 in Paris, now at 56. Some things don't change. Some men don't learn caution no matter how many years pass. The formality is painful, suffocating. Whitmore remembers Fort Riley when they used first names, remembers Paris when they argued as equals. But that was another lifetime, another army. Now there's a general star between them and a decade of silence in a gulf that can't be crossed without breaking protocol. But Whitmore tries anyway. Beauregard, he says quietly, breaking protocol, using the first name. Be careful out there. The desert is unforgiving. Caldwell's face softens, just slightly, just for a moment. The formal mask slips. I will, Thaddeus. You too. The Pacific won't be any easier. For 3 seconds, they're not general and colonel. They're just two officers who knew each other when they were young, when the world was simpler, when wars were something that happened to other countries. Then the moment passes. The masks return. The distance reasserts itself. Good luck, Colonel. Good luck, General. They salute, turn away, walk in opposite directions down the War Department hallway. It's the last time they'll speak in person for 4 years. Neither of them knows it yet. Neither of them suspects that the next time they meet, it will be too late. The Pacific, Guadalcanal, August 1942. Whitmore's war is water and jungle and islands with unpronounceable names that most Americans have never heard of and can't find on a map. Guadalcanal. First offensive. 6 months of brutal fighting in jungle heat. Marines dying from Japanese bullets and malaria in equal measure. The Japanese Navy owning the night. American ships getting sunk in Iron Bottom Sound until the seafloor is littered with hulls. Whitmore coordinates from his headquarters. Planning. Organizing. Making sure supplies reach the front. Making sure ammunition keeps flowing. Making sure every soldier has what he needs to fight. It's not glamorous. Nobody writes articles about supply chain logistics. Nobody makes movies about quartermaster operations. But it's essential. Wars aren't won by brave men charging into gunfire. They're won by brave men charging into gunfire with enough bullets to keep shooting. Whitmore knows this, accepts it, has made peace with his role. But sometimes late at night, he wonders what it's like on the front lines. What Caldwell is experiencing in North Africa, whether combat is as terrible and glorious as he imagines. North Africa, El Getter, March 1943. The newspaper arrives at Whitmore's headquarters 3 weeks later, stained with seawater from the journey across the Pacific. But the headline is clear enough. American tanks defeat Rommel at El Getter. Whitmore reads it standing at his desk. The article is breathless, excited. Finally, an American victory against the vaunted Africa Corps. Finally, proof that American armor can match German armor. The article describes the battle, how General Caldwell's armored division punched through German defensive positions, how he personally led the advance, how he turned Rommel's flank and sent the Desert Fox retreating for the first time in 2 years. The article includes a photograph. General Beauregard Caldwell, promoted finally, after 25 years as a major and colonel. Standing on a tank, no helmet, binoculars around his neck, leather jacket instead of regulation uniform. Looking exactly like what he is, a combat commander in his element. 57 years old, but looking ageless. The scars from the Great War visible on his face, but smiling, actually smiling. For the first time in any photograph Whitmore has ever seen of him, Whitmore reads the article twice, sets it aside, returns to his logistics reports. Tarawa is coming up. The invasion will require coordination of naval bombardment, amphibious assault, and supply distribution across 6,000 miles of ocean. It's complicated, challenging, important work. But an hour later, he picks up the newspaper again, studies the photograph. Caldwell looks alive. That's the only word Whitmore can find. Completely, intensely, undeniably alive. The way he looked at Fort Riley during that cavalry drill. The way he looked in Paris talking about speed and aggression and men who can adapt. He's doing what he was born to do. Whitmore pulls out a map of North Africa, pins it to his wall, uses a small flag to mark El Guitar. Red for American victory. The map joins his Pacific maps. Now his office has two theaters, his own advance island hopping toward Japan, and Caldwell's advance across North Africa toward Europe. He tells himself it's for strategic awareness, understanding the overall war effort, coordinating Pacific operations with European operations. But his aide knows better. Every morning, Whitmore reads the intelligence summaries from both theaters. Then he updates his maps. Pins showing his progress. Pins showing Caldwell's progress. Racing across different oceans toward the same victory. Sicily, August 1943, 9:00 a.m. The telegram arrives while Whitmore is reviewing casualty reports from New Georgia. His aide delivers it. Personal cable. Eyes only, from Eisenhower. Caldwell Incident Field Hospital. Sicily, stop struck soldiers suffering combat fatigue. Stop public outrage. Immediate. Stop. Considering relief from command. Stop. Request your counsel. Stop Ike. Whitmore sets down his coffee. Reads the telegram again. Struck a soldier. That's all the detail provided, but Whitmore doesn't need more details. He knows Caldwell, can picture exactly what happened with perfect clarity. Some young private, shell-shocked, combat fatigue, the 1,000-yard stare, sitting in a field hospital while other men bleed from actual wounds. Caldwell visiting, seeing what he perceives as cowardice. Reacting with his fists instead of his judgment, because Caldwell has never learned to control his immediate responses to things that offend his sense of what soldiers should be. Stupid, reckless, completely, utterly predictable. Whitmore pulls out paper, fountain pen, begins drafting a response. He could tell Eisenhower to relieve Caldwell. It would be justified. Striking a subordinate is grounds for court-martial. Striking a sick subordinate is even worse. And it would remove a complication from the war. Remove someone who causes problems. Remove someone whose success makes other officers feel inadequate. Remove a rival. Is that what Caldwell is? A rival. Whitmore's pen hovers over paper. He looks at the photograph on his wall. El Guitar. Caldwell on the tank. Alive. He thinks about Fort Riley, about Paris, about 30 years of watching Caldwell do impossible things because he doesn't know they're impossible. He writes, Ike, stop. Caldwell is Caldwell, stop. You knew this when you gave him armor command. Stop. He wins battles. Stop. Question is whether winning battles matters more than public relations. Stop your decision. Stop, but consider carefully. Stop. We need his kind right now. Stop. America needs officers who kill Germans. Stop. Not officers who never make mistakes. Stop. Whitmore. He sends it before he can reconsider. 3 days later, another cable. Keeping Caldwell. Stop. Private reprimand. Stop. Public apology required. Stop. Back in command within month. Stop. Thank you for counsel. Stop. Never mention this again. Stop. Ike. Whitmore files the telegram. Feels something he won't examine too closely. Relief, satisfaction. The knowledge that he just saved Caldwell's career when he could have ended it, whatever it is, he pushes it away. Gets back to work. But that night he writes in his journal, saved Caldwell today. Probably shouldn't have. But we need him. Need officers who fight instead of politicians who posture. Need men who win battles even if they lose friends. Need warriors even when warriors are difficult. Maybe especially when warriors are difficult. The Pacific. Spring 1944. Whitmore's office in Manila has expanded. More maps, more staff, more operations. The Pacific campaign is accelerating. Island after island falling to American forces. Saipan, Tinian, Guam, each one a stepping stone toward Japan. But there's a new map now, smaller than the Pacific maps, pinned to the wall beside them. Europe, specifically France and Germany. Whitmore added it 3 months ago after Normandy. Tells himself it's for strategic awareness, coordinating with European operations, understanding the overall war. His aide knows it's because of Caldwell. Every morning, Whitmore reads intelligence reports from both theaters. Then he updates his maps. Blue pins for Pacific advances, red pins for European advances. His advance and Caldwell's advance moving in parallel across different hemispheres. And Caldwell is moving fast, impossibly fast. Breakout from Normandy, June. Liberation of Paris, August. Drive across France, September. Into Germany, October. It's not methodical like Whitmore's island campaign. It's a sprint. Caldwell is doing what he's always done, moving faster than anyone thinks possible before the enemy can react, before headquarters can say no. Whitmore tracks it all. His aide enters one morning, finds Whitmore placing another red pin on the European map, advancing Caldwell's position another 30 miles. General Caldwell's Third Army is making remarkable progress, sir. Yes, Whitmore says. Doesn't look away from the map. Faster than Montgomery's 21st Army Group in the north. Considerably faster, yes. Some reports say he's ignoring his supply lines, taking unnecessary risks, outrunning his logistics chain. Whitmore finally turns, looks at his aide, young captain, good officer. Doesn't understand what he's witnessing. Some people said the same thing about his tactics at Fort Riley in 1910. Those people were wrong then too. The aide blinks. Sir, Caldwell doesn't ignore his supply lines. He accepts risk that other commanders won't accept. There's a difference. He's calculated that speed matters more than perfect supply. He's probably right. Yes, sir. After the aide leaves, Whitmore catches himself, realizes he just defended Caldwell, out loud, to a subordinate, explained and justified tactics he's never discussed with Caldwell himself. He returns to his desk, to the real work, the Pacific, his command, his responsibility, the war he's actually fighting instead of watching from afar. But his eyes keep drifting to that European map, to those red pins marking Caldwell's inexorable advance, to the question he won't voice even to himself. Could I do what he's doing? If I had his command, his freedom, his certainty, could I move that fast? Could I take those risks? Could I be that kind of commander? The answer he suspects is no, and that suspicion tastes like failure. Manila, December 1944, 11:30 p.m. Late at night. Whitmore's quarters. He's alone reviewing reconnaissance photos of Luzon when he makes a decision he'll later question. He opens his desk drawer, removes his personal journal. The leather is worn now. 4 years of war. 4 years of observations and thoughts and the things he can't say in official reports. He opens to a blank page, writes the date. Then December 15th, 1944, Manila. Watched Caldwell's progress across France today. Third Army covered 40 miles in 24 hours. 40 miles. The Germans can't keep up. Eisenhower's supply chain can't keep up. Nobody can keep up. But Caldwell doesn't stop. He never stops. I envy that. The freedom to simply act, to trust your instincts completely, to move without second-guessing every decision. My war is different. Careful, methodical, coordinated. I move chess pieces while Caldwell drives a tank. Both necessary, both honorable, both contributing to victory. But only one of them feels like fighting. I wonder if he thinks about me at all. Probably not. Why would he? I'm safe in headquarters while he's risking his life every day. Why would he spare a thought for the man behind a desk 6,000 miles away? But I think about him, more than I should, more than makes sense for two officers who haven't spoken in 3 years. Not friendship. We were never friends. But something else. Recognition, maybe. The understanding that we're two versions of the same equation. Two ways of being a soldier. Two answers to the same question. He chose combat. I chose strategy. He stayed true to who he was. I compromised at every turn to survive the peacetime army. And somehow, impossibly, we're both winning our wars. I should be satisfied with that. I am satisfied with that, but I still envy him. Whitmore closes the journal, returns it to the drawer, locks it. Nobody will ever read those words. They're just for him. The truth he can't speak but needs to write. The acknowledgement that respect and envy can coexist. That you can wish the best for someone while simultaneously wishing you were them. That watching another man succeed at being what you failed to become is both inspiring and painful in equal measure. Europe, May 8, 1945, victory in Europe. Germany surrenders. After 6 years of war, after millions dead, after cities destroyed, after a continent reduced to rubble. It's over. Whitmore receives the news at his headquarters in Manila. The Pacific War continues. Japan fights on alone now. But Europe is finished. The Third Reich is finished. Hitler is dead. The Wehrmacht has surrendered. The cable from Eisenhower includes details. Caldwell's Third Army ended war outside Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. Stop. 600 miles in 281 days. Stop. Fastest advance in military history. Stop. Could not have won without him. Stop. Ike. Whitmore reads that line 3 times. Fastest advance in military history. He looks at his European map. The red pins tracking Caldwell's progress now cover the entire width of France and Germany and into Czechoslovakia. From Normandy to Pilsen. An unbroken line of conquest. 600 miles in 281 days. Whitmore calculates 2.13 miles per day average. But he knows the reality was different. Caldwell didn't average anything. Some days 0 while regrouping. Some days 40 while breaking through. Always unpredictable. Always moving when the enemy expected him to stop. The opposite of Whitmore's methodical island campaign. But effective. Undeniably effective. Whitmore drafts a congratulatory cable. Writes 3 different versions. Deletes them all. What can he say? Congratulations on proving me wrong about everything. Congratulations on being the officer I always wanted to be. Congratulations on staying true to yourself while I compromise myself into irrelevance. He sends nothing. Some truths are better left unspoken. Some congratulations sound like confessions. Germany, October 1945. The cable arrives encrypted. Eyes only. From Eisenhower directly to Whitmore. Caldwell's situation critical. Stop. Made public comments comparing Nazis to American political parties. Stop press demanding immediate relief. Stop politicians outraged. Stop veterans groups protesting. Stop. I have no choice. Stop removing him from 3rd Army Command. Stop reassigning to administrative role, 15th Army. Stop wanted you to know before public announcements. Stop Ike. Whitmore reads it in his office. Tokyo now. The Pacific War is over. Japan surrendered in August. He's Supreme Commander of the occupation now. The most powerful American in Asia, responsible for rebuilding a defeated nation. And Caldwell apparently is destroying himself with his mouth. Whitmore remembers Paris. You need to learn when to keep your mouth shut. Caldwell's response, I'd rather be right than make general. He became a general, still doesn't know when to shut up, still saying what he thinks instead of what's politically acceptable, still choosing honesty over survival, still being Caldwell. Whitmore cables back. Ike stop understood. Stop Caldwell is who he is. Stop saved him in Sicily when it mattered. Stop cannot save him from himself now. Stop do what you must stop. He had good run. Stop Whitmore. He sends it. Feels what relief that the decision isn't his. Guilt that he's not fighting harder. Satisfaction that Caldwell's recklessness finally caught up to him. Sorrow that a great commander is ending his career in disgrace. All of it. None of it. Just the hollow knowledge that Caldwell's war is over. Not with glory, not with triumph. With a whimper and a reassignment and a slow fade into obscurity. The warrior survived 2 world wars only to be defeated by peacetime politics. Tokyo, December 9th, 1945, 2:10 a.m. Japan time. Whitmore is asleep when his aide knocks. Urgent, eyes only cable. From Europe. He reads it standing in his quarters. Bathrobe over his pajamas. Sleep still in his eyes. The words sharp and cold and final. General Caldwell injured automobile accident near Mannheim. Stop collision with truck. Stop neck broken. Stop paralyzed from neck down. Stop conscious but critical condition. Stop Heidelberg Hospital. Stop prognosis uncertain. Stop more details to follow. Whitmore reads it 3 times. Automobile accident, not combat, not enemy fire, not a hero's death on a battlefield somewhere. A car accident. Caldwell survived Belleau-Wood, survived the Meuse-Argonne, survived North Africa and Sicily and France and Germany, led men through 2 world wars, faced down Rommel and the Wehrmacht and every enemy the 20th century could throw at him. And now he's paralyzed from a traffic accident on a quiet German road. The irony is unbearable. Whitmore sits at his desk in his quarters, pulls out paper. His hands shake slightly. From cold, from shock, from something he won't name. He begins writing, Beauregard, you can't die from a car accident. You're supposed to die in battle. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. A warrior, a fighter, someone who faces death with courage and strength. I know we're not friends, We never were. We never found a way to be. But I respect you more than anyone I have ever served with. Your courage, your certainty, your refusal to compromise who you are for anyone or anything. All the things I never had, all the things I gave away to survive. Please fight this. The way you fought everything else. Don't let something as stupid and meaningless as a car accident finish what the Germans couldn't. The world needs officers like you. The army needs officers like you. I need... He stops, stares at what he's written. The last three words, I need. Need what need Caldwell? Need the reminder that there are still warriors who haven't been ground down by bureaucracy. Need the example of someone who stayed true when everyone else compromised. Need to know that men like Caldwell still exist in a world that's increasingly hostile to men like Caldwell. He crumples the letter, throws it in the wastebasket. Too personal, too revealing, too late, too honest, everything he's never allowed himself to be. He sends flowers to the hospital instead. With a card wishing you swift recovery, General Whitmore. Formal, appropriate, safe, meaningless, everything he always is. Tokyo, December 10th, 20th, 1945. The reports come daily, brief, clinical. Military efficiency applied to human suffering. Day 1. Condition unchanged. Paralyzed. Conscious. Responsive. Day 2. Condition unchanged. Breathing complications developing. Day 3. Condition stable. Wife Cordelia at bedside continuously. Day 4. Slight improvement. Responsive to questions. Mental faculties intact. Day 5. Condition worsening. Pulmonary concerns. Infection risk high. Day 6. Stable. No change. Day 7. Breathing more difficult. Pulmonary complications worsening. Whitmore reads each report, files them carefully in a folder he keeps in his desk, says nothing to anyone about them, doesn't discuss Caldwell with his staff, doesn't mention the daily cables, just reads them, files them, continues with his work. On day 7, his aide asks, "Sir, do you want to send another message to General Caldwell? Something more personal than flowers?" "No," Whitmore says without looking up from his papers. "The flowers were sufficient. His wife mentioned he asked about you, sir. Wanted to know if you'd sent word." Whitmore looks up sharply. "He asked about me." "Yes, sir. According to Mrs. Caldwell, he's asked several times. Did Whitmore send anything?" She told him about the flowers. "What did he say?" According to her, he just nodded and closed his eyes. Something twists in Whitmore's chest. Physical. Painful. Caldwell paralyzed in a hospital bed asking about him. And all Whitmore sent was flowers with a formal card. He almost drafts another cable. Something real. Something honest. Something that acknowledges 35 years of complicated history. But he doesn't. Because he doesn't know what to say. Because he's spent 35 years not knowing what to say to Beauregard Caldwell. Because the distance between them has become too wide to cross with words on a cable form. One more silence won't matter, except it does matter. Because on day 12, the reports stop coming, and the final telegram arrives. The one sitting on his desk right now. The one announcing that Beauregard Caldwell is dead. Tokyo, December 22nd, 1945, 12:15 a.m. Whitmore sits at his desk. The memories have run their course. Fort Riley to Paris to Washington to 2 wars fought in parallel. 35 years compressed into a few hours of remembering. Now there's only the present, the telegram, the statement he's written, the recognition that Caldwell is gone and will never come back. He picks up the phone. His secretary answers immediately. She's been waiting. "Come back in, please. I'm ready now." She enters with her notepad, sits, pen ready. Whitmore has thought about this for 30 minutes, has considered various phrasings, has tried to find words that capture what needs to be captured without revealing what needs to stay hidden. "Write this," he says. His voice is steady, each word chosen with the precision he's applied to every decision in his career. "The death of General Beauregard Caldwell is a great loss to the Army and to the nation." Pause. The secretary writes. The pen scratches softly on paper. "He was one of the most brilliant soldiers America has produced." Another pause. Whitmore's throat tightens slightly. He pushes through it, forces the words out past whatever emotion is trying to stop them. "A great captain who will take his place among the finest commanders of all time." Silence. The secretary looks up. "Is that all, sir?" Whitmore wants to say more. Wants to write about Fort Riley and Paris and the maps he tracked and the envy and respect and complicated recognition that bound them across 35 years and 2 wars. Wants to confess that he measured himself against Caldwell every day for decades. Wants to admit that watching Caldwell succeed made him feel both proud and inadequate. Wants to acknowledge that some part of him needed Caldwell to exist so he could define himself in opposition. But he can't. Because that's private. Because that's his burden to carry. Because some truths die with the men who know them. Yes, he says, that's all. Type it exactly as I dictated. Release it to the press immediately. All major newspapers, Associated Press, United Press, International if possible. Yes, sir. The secretary stands. It's a fine tribute, sir. General Caldwell would have appreciated it. Would he have? Whitmore isn't sure. Caldwell never cared about tributes or recognition or what people said about him, only about what he did, about whether he led his men well, about whether he won his battles. Everything else was noise. The secretary leaves. Whitmore is alone again, with the telegram, with the memories, with the knowledge that he just wrote the final words about a man who was never quite his friend, but always something more important. And with the question that will haunt him for the rest of his life, why didn't he say it sooner, when Caldwell could have heard it when it might have mattered? Why did he wait until the tribute was all that remained outside Tokyo sleeps? The war is over. The occupation continues. Life moves forward because life always moves forward. But in this office, at this desk, at 12:17 a.m. on December 22nd, 1945, Thaddeus Whitmore grieves in the only way he knows how. Silently, privately, completely. For the warrior he respected but never knew how to reach. For the friendship that never was but should have been. For all the words left unspoken until speaking them no longer mattered. For 35 years of distance that he maintained because he didn't know how to close it. For the recognition that respect and friendship are not the same thing, and he confused them for decades. For everything he should have said and never did. The telegram lies on his desk. Final, irrevocable. The end of a story that never found its proper middle. Only a beginning at Fort Riley and an ending in Tokyo, and a vast emptiness in between, filled with wars and silence and all the conversations they never had. Tokyo, Japan, December 22nd, 1945, 12:30 a.m. The secretary is gone. The statement is typed. Tomorrow, newspapers across America will print Whitmore's tribute to Caldwell. Formal, respectful, insufficient. Whitmore opens his desk drawer, removes Caldwell's service file. 35 years of documentation. He's looking for something specific. He finds it 40 pages in. Efficiency report. Major Beauregard Caldwell, evaluating officer Lieutenant Colonel Thaddeus Whitmore, November 1932. He reads what he wrote 18 years ago. Major Caldwell is an exceptional combat leader. However, he lacks the political judgment necessary for higher command. He acts on instinct rather than doctrine. Recommendation, suitable for colonel, not suitable for general. Not suitable for general, he wrote that in 1932, 13 years before Caldwell's Third Army tore across Europe faster than any force in history. Whitmore picks up his pen, writes in the margin, I was wrong. TW, December 22nd, 1945. Nobody will see this notation but him. But he needs to write it, needs to acknowledge that he tried to limit Caldwell, tried to make him safer, more controllable, more like Whitmore himself. Thank God someone ignored his recommendation. He removes a photograph from the file. Fort Riley, 1910. Young Whitmore in the center, stern and proper. Young Caldwell 3 rows back, eyes bright with certainty. In the same photograph, but never together. Always separate. He sets it beside the telegram. Youth and death. Beginning and end. Luxembourg. December 24th, 1945. 10:20 a.m. The cemetery is on a hillside. 5,000 white crosses. Men from Third Army. Men who followed Caldwell into battle. 6 pallbearers carry the flag-draped casket. Young sergeants, faces raw with grief. Cordelia Caldwell stands at the graveside, 60 years old, 37 years married. She wears black and holds a folded paper. The chaplain speaks the usual words: duty, honor, sacrifice. Then Cordelia steps forward. 200 soldiers stand at attention. The December wind cuts through their uniforms. I received this statement from General Thaddeus Whitmore in Tokyo. He could not be here today, but asked that I read his words. Her voice is steady. The death of General Beauregard Caldwell is a great loss to the Army and to the nation. He was one of the most brilliant soldiers America has produced, a great captain who will take his place among the finest commanders of all time. She refolds the paper, looks at the casket. Beauregard asked about General Whitmore in his final days. I told him about the flowers, the card. He said Thaddeus always did prefer formality. But when I read him this statement yesterday before he passed, he opened his eyes and said, Thaddeus finally said it. Tell him thank you. Her voice breaks. Tap sounds across the hillside. The soldiers salute. The casket is lowered. General Beauregard Caldwell is home. Among his men. Tokyo, Japan, December 24th, 1945. 2:00 a.m. Whitmore sits alone in his quarters. The radio is tuned to Armed Forces Radio, broadcasting the funeral live. Static-filled but clear enough. The chaplain's prayer. Cordelia reading his statement, her voice breaking on Caldwell's final words. Thaddeus finally said it. Tell him thank you. Whitmore's hand tightens on the armrest. Caldwell heard the tribute and said thank you for words that should have been said 30 years ago. Something inside Whitmore cracks. The broadcast ends. He turns off the radio, walks to the window. Tokyo dark below. He speaks quietly to the darkness. You possess certainty I spent 40 years trying to learn. The freedom to trust yourself completely. All the things I admired and could never become. Pause. You were the better soldier. I knew it at Fort Riley. I knew it in Paris. I knew it every day I tracked your advance across Europe from my headquarters. His hand presses against the glass. And I never told you when you were alive. Outside, Tokyo sleeps. Inside, Whitmore makes his decision. He will not attend the funeral. Cannot leave Japan. His duties require him here. That's what he'll tell people. The truth is different. He cannot face Cordelia. Cannot stand at that grave and pretend Caldwell was just another colleague. Because if he goes to Luxembourg, he'll have to confront what Caldwell meant to him. And he's not ready for that. So he stays in Tokyo, alone, carrying words spoken too late and words that will never be spoken at all. Korea, April 11th, 1951, 6 years later. Whitmore is 71, still Supreme Commander. But he's made a catastrophic mistake. He recommended attacking China. President Truman said no. Whitmore argued publicly, in newspapers, in speeches. The telegram is brief. General Whitmore, stop. You are hereby relieved of all commands effective immediately. Stop. Truman. Whitmore reads it in the same office where he received news of Caldwell's death. The symmetry is unbearable. Caldwell was relieved in 1945 for speaking his mind. Died 3 months later. A hero but removed. Now Whitmore. Same reason. Same pattern. He opens the drawer. Caldwell's file. Finds his 1932 evaluation and his notation, I was wrong. He adds another line. Caldwell was relieved for speaking truth. I am being relieved for the same. Perhaps we were more alike than I admitted. T.W. April 11, 1951. He closes the file. Caldwell died at the height of his legend. Whitmore will live to see his diminish. You were right, Beauregard, he says to the empty office. Warriors can't survive peacetime. Luxembourg, September 1964. 19 years after the funeral. An old man walks slowly up the cemetery path. 84 years old. Civilian clothes, no uniform. Thaddeus Whitmore hasn't worn a uniform in 13 years. Has spent his final years writing memoirs defending his decisions. But today he's here for something else. His aide carries a wreath. Are you certain you can find it, sir? I know where it is. 10 minutes. Past thousands of graves. Then Whitmore stops. General Beauregard Caldwell, 1885-1945. 3rd Army, warrior. The aide places the wreath, steps back. I'll wait by the entrance, sir. Whitmore is alone with Caldwell. Finally, 19 years too late. He stands at attention. Old habits. A jet flies overhead. The world has moved on, but some things remain. He speaks quietly. I should have come to the funeral. Cordelia probably thinks I didn't care. The truth is I cared too much. Pause. I've spent 19 years thinking about what I should have said. All the opportunities I missed because I was too proud, too formal, too careful. His voice grows quieter. You were right about everything. Fort Riley, Paris, every argument we never had. You were right. Pause. You were the better soldier. I was the better politician. You stayed true. I compromised. You died a hero. I lived long enough to be fired in disgrace. The words flow now, 19 years of silence breaking. I tracked your progress across Europe, every day, pins on a map. My aide asked why. I couldn't answer, couldn't explain that watching you succeed felt necessary, that you were the only standard that mattered. His hand touches the white cross. I envied you, respected you, needed you, and never found the words. Eyes close. I'm sorry, Beauregard. I'm sorry I kept you at distance. I'm sorry I wrote that evaluation saying you shouldn't be a general. I'm sorry I never said this when you were alive. He opens his eyes. You belong here, among your men. I'll be buried in Arlington with the politicians in uniform. We go where we belong. He straightens. One last salute. Sharp, precise. Goodbye, Beauregard. You were everything a soldier should be, and I was everything a soldier becomes when he survives too long. 5 seconds, then lowers his hand, turns, walks back down the hillside. His aide waits. Are you ready, sir? Yes. They drive away. Whitmore doesn't look back. Washington, D.C., April 1968. Thaddeus Whitmore dies at Walter Reed Hospital, 88 years old, his wife at his bedside. The funeral is at Arlington. Full honors. Thousands attend. Formal. Dignified. Everything Whitmore would have wanted. After the ceremony, executors sort his personal effects. In his desk, a locked drawer. Inside, Caldwell's service file. The Fort Riley photograph. The death telegram. And an envelope. Unsealed. Addressed to Mrs. Cordelia Caldwell. Inside a letter. Undated. The paper aged, but the ink clear. The executor reads it. Calls Cordelia. Mrs. Caldwell, I've found something you should have. Boston, Massachusetts, May 1968. Cordelia Caldwell is 73. Widow for 23 years. The letter arrives by courier. She opens it in afternoon sun, adjusts her glasses, begins to read. Dear Mrs. Caldwell, I never told your husband what he meant to me. I couldn't find the words. I spent 35 years respecting him from a distance because I didn't know how to respect him up close. That was my failure, not his. He was the finest combat officer I ever knew. The kind of leader men follow not because they have to, but because they want to. The kind of warrior who makes other men brave. I was none of those things. I was careful where he was bold, strategic where he was instinctive, political where he was honest. The Army needed both of us, but if I'm honest, it needed him more. I tracked his progress across Europe. Every day, I told myself it was professional interest. The truth was simpler. I needed to know where he was, needed to measure my own advance against his, needed the reminder that warriors like him still existed. At Fort Riley in 1932, I wrote an evaluation, said he wasn't suitable for general rank. I was wrong, completely wrong, and I'm grateful someone ignored my recommendation. I'm sorry I never said this when he was alive. I'm sorry I kept silent at his funeral. I'm sorry for all the conversations we should have had but never did. Your husband was my better, in every way that mattered. Thank you for sharing him with the Army. Thank you for sharing him with history. Thank you for sharing him with, even though I never deserved it. With deepest respect, Thaddeus Whitmore. Cordelia reads it twice, eyes wet, but smiling. She walks to her bedroom, opens the drawer with Beauregard's medals, places Whitmore's letter next to his Third Army citation. He finally said it, Beau, she whispers, just like you knew he would. She closes the drawer. 2 warriors, 2 wars, 2 paths that never quite converged, and 1 letter, written but never sent, found but never expected. The truth discovered after both men were gone. Epilogue. Beauregard Caldwell rests in Luxembourg, among 5,000 white crosses, among his men. Thaddeus Whitmore rests in Arlington, among the generals, among the politicians in uniform, 6,000 miles apart, just like they lived. But perhaps not as far as they believed. His memoirs mention Caldwell twice, formally, a capable commander. But in his desk, they found the letter. It began, I never told your husband what he meant to me. It ended, thank you for sharing him with me even though I never deserved it. Cordelia received it 1 month after Whitmore died. She placed it next to Beauregard's medals, where it belonged. 2 warriors who understood each other, respected each other, needed each other. They just never found the right moment to say it, until it was too late. And then they said it anyway, to empty rooms and silent graves and letters that arrived after death, because some truths demand to be spoken, even when no one is left to hear them.